Hey coaches, it's been a while since we've seen each other. I apologize for that and the fact that not only have we all had an extended break from one another naturally in our classes, but also because I missed you the week before spring break. But I hope you enjoyed your time with Dr. T, Dr. Thistlethwaite, and talk a little bit more about what you did with him and how it links into our next topic of this week. But before we get into that, I just wanted to touch base with you about our schedule and just kind of talk about the rest of the semester together since it is definitely unconventional. Um, our class is going to be quite different. Some classes transition well online, and they sort of work fine. You can make that material pretty accessible, um, and get sort of the goals of learning that you wanted to in a lot of your lecture-based courses. But there are some classes that are trickier to do online. This is certainly one of them. Your lab classes for sciences or fine arts, performing arts, those kinds of classes are definitely harder to do online as successfully maybe as sort of your lecture-based courses. And again, this is a class that would fall into that category of being a little more tricky to successfully do the same or similar to the classroom experience because our class is so applied in terms of your experience with what we do. So I apologize for that because not only um, can you not do some of the hands-on things for us here in person, but you can't really, even because of the state of our world right now, can't even do them at home and like videotape them because of social distancing. And most of us where we're living are in stay home restrictions right now, and those possibly could extend for some of us or happen if we're not already in those, where in our home state could happen for us yet through April. So it's unusual, but you certainly will still get information that's really important for you and helpful for you as you prepare to be a successful and highly functioning good coach for your athletes. So we'll make the best of it. It's going to be different than we had anticipated from the get go, but still, we'll get lots of good information for you and share lots of good things with you. I did want to kind of just touch base on the schedule and how it's been modified a little bit for you. Some things I'm just gonna highlight for right now and give more detail later. Um, and then I'll go into what you're doing this week and leading into next week. So um, we still have so this week we're going to be talking about common injuries in your particular sport area, and I'll talk more about that specifically after I'm kind of done with this overview. Next week we'll finish up the book, the last part of the book, which is sort of like information management, what you do just to kind of keep things organized and all the things you're responsible for as a coach. It's kind of an overwhelming section of the semester in that you realize like how much stuff really you have responsibility for with your team of your team of athletes, and also risk management. So we'll talk a little bit about sport law, sort of the areas that you really need to be aware of, be responsible for. That's in the last section of the book. I know some of you are concerned about not having the text. I've been the publishers are definitely backlogged with providing free online access to text, but this book is a book that I can get online, free access for you online. So I'm working to get that ready for you so that you can have that to read this last section of the book. If it really proves to be kind of a major hurdle to get that access for you, then I will make sure that there's a PDF file of the readings for next week that you can use for your questions for reflection and to prepare for the lectures that I'll do for next week. Um, Speaking of that, these video lectures that I'll provide each week will highlight the topic of the week. Sometimes they're going to be a little bit longer lecture, like next week should be the longest lecture that I have for you, because we're covering quite a bit of information with team information management and risk management. But overall, in general, there's to be some sort of shorter tutorial videos that we'll use, and excuse me, and you're gonna make some in return. Speaking of that, when we are your live coaching videos now will be quite different. Unfortunately, because you won't be able to do and I'm so bummed out because it's my favorite part, but unfortunately, because you won't be able to do your actual like practice segment, we're going to do something in place of that where you're going to do kind of a video demo on teaching your sport. And again, because we have social distancing, this is going to be a little trickier to do, but there will be more details on that coming for you, so you know how to prepare for that and show and create your own video, your own coaching video. But essentially, you will do a demo of skills and sort of create your own, critical skills of your sport video, coaching video for your demo. And we'll share those with each other and, kind of just critique one another in terms of the effectiveness of the video and whatnot. So, more details on that to come. Next week, I'll post that so you can start preparing for what that's going to look like at the end of the semester. And so, what we'll do over the last few weeks of the semester is share with one another these coaching videos that we create. And each week we'll have a set of coaching videos that you'll view and look at, and then provide feedback for via our Moodle site for class, which will be like discussion board or some kind of feedback mechanism on our Moodle site. So that's how we're going to sort of capture that experience with the live coaching demo that we have left. The other thing we're going to have before the end of the semester is a Zoom session with some other coaches, or with some coaches that are in the profession. This was a coaching panel that we were planning to have the second to last class of the session of the semester. So instead of obviously an in-person coaching panel, we will do it via Zoom. What I might do is I haven't really discussed yet with my coaching panel participants about splitting the panel and maybe having two sessions that you can sign up for one or the other. I might do that only because of the size of our class. It might be just a little easier, but it might be, really fun to have our full class together and that kind of for that kind of an experience. So I'm gonna sort of talk to the coaches and see if there's a preference there with them, the ones that are going to be on our panel, and so that will be the second to last class session. That will be one of the class sessions that it will be synchronous. We will have it all together. There will be a time that will be set for that coaches panel, and you have to log in to experience that coaches panel. So that will be the second to last class session that we have together, which is April 28th. So please try to reserve that time as a time that you're going to get online with our whole class for that panel discussion. And we'll have that at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So if you're somebody in a different time zone, make sure that you're planning for 7 p.m. on April 28th to be online together for that Zoom class. And again, like when we get closer to it, I'll give you a little bit more information and I'll tell you how you'll receive the link for the Zoom session. Probably a lot of your classes especially if they are synchronous or being run in a synchronous fashion, are being done on Zoom. So hopefully, most, if not all of you, have had a Zoom session or will have had a Zoom session by the time we get to that on April 28th. But it's very simple to use, very easy process. So hopefully, we'll find that to be equally accessible when we do it a few weeks from now, about a month from now. So, I guess the only other two things I want to just address with you is your coaching observation assignment. Now, most of you I know probably had not done your observation of the coach or sport that you were going to observe for that paper. So again, that's really pretty tricky to now do because pretty much all sports have been canceled, right? Called off, aren't happening, or they certainly shouldn't be. And I would never encourage you or expect you to, if somebody was having some kind of practice sessions, for you to go. That's an absolute terrible idea in this stage of life that we are in right now. So, if you should happen to be around people who are doing some kind of physical activity in a group setting, please don't go to that right now. Or for the rest of the semester for that matter. So we are not in a situation where if you haven't done we are not in a situation where if you have not done your observation that you will be able to do that successfully. So there is a modified version of this. There's a modified version of this assignment. It's posted on it's posted on Moodle for you to look at and to address. And it really basically is going online and looking at coaching videos, maybe accessing old or previously broadcasted features on coaches, anything that sort of highlights and gives you the opportunity to watch coaches in action. My sort of goal for you is to find those opportunities to watch and observe coaches in action in real time and make some observations from that. So if you were lucky enough to do your observation and you can write your paper based on that experience that you had, awesome. That's great, and continue the way that that assignment was originally presented to you. But if not, this is how we will make up for that opportunity. And so you will have the ability to in the next month do that assignment in its modified version if need be. Okay. Um, and then the last thing I want to talk about is just your final portfolio that will be due sort of finals week. Uh, that assignment hasn't been officially posted yet. I'll post it probably next week or the following week. Um, this is going to be a portfolio that will be comprised of a lot of the things we've been doing throughout the semesters, these little assignments that we've been doing throughout the semester. And so what you will do is kind of put them all together in a nice little document um, that has all these pieces in it. And it can be sort of used as a professional portfolio when you apply for an interview for coaching jobs. And also something for you as kind of a starter packet of information when you um, go into a coaching job. You have kind of just this you have this sort of like baseline of information and preparation that you have done for starting to develop your own team and working with your own program. So that is still we're still planning to have that due as your final project, the final for this class. But instead of handing it in to me personally, you'll hand it in electronically. Pardon me. Excuse me. So it will no longer be an in-person assignment as much as it will be something you'll submit electronically. So a lot of electronic things, a lot of opportunities to think about how we think about our profession in a different way, having to think about remotely working with our athletes or providing information to our athletes. So this is a good experience because it is an untraditional or non-traditional way of thinking about teaching our sport and observing our sport, but certainly could be something that we experience more in the future. So, I mean, I certainly don't think this is the last time we'll deal with a global pandemic or something that causes us to have to be isolate in isolation from one another. So, I think this is certainly a practice that isn't going to go without without being something that you'll refer to again in your future. So back to this week's topic of a sport injury and sport injury related to your specific sport. This is a nice connection to what you did with Dr. T when he came to our class a couple weeks ago. Of course, I never would have thought that there would have been this sort of um, this kind of break in between from when he talked to you about nutrition and strength and conditioning and some of these important aspects of what you do as a coach to help your athletes experience sort of peak performance levels, right? But this is a nice piggyback on that. Again, even though there's been kind of this distance between the time you spent with him and then this topic, but this is important. Being knowledgeable about injuries related to your sport, the most common injuries related to your sport, because not all of us will have the opportunity to work closely with athletic trainers, especially when you're working with more of the real youth athletes. Those of you that are going to be in college and beyond, you will most likely have access to certified athletic trainers on a regular basis, but um, those of you that are going to be working with youth athletes, especially the younger you get, you're not going to have that immediate access to certified athletic trainers. Um, so it is important that you have a good baseline knowledge of the most commonly occurring or the most frequent injuries experienced in your sport and have a sense of what are the risk factors, how can you manage on the front end to do some preemptive work to try to avoid a high frequency of those injuries, not avoid them altogether because nobody can ensure that and do that, but maybe cut back on the frequency of injuries, how to recognize when someone might be displaying sort of characteristics of having that particular type of injury, how you can help sort of just guide an athlete once they've had that injury in their in their recovery time before they get back to play. So this is really important for you to have knowledge, baseline knowledge about this. Again, you are, well, some of you might be going into physical therapy or athletic training, but most of you, this is not going to be an area of expertise. You are not going to be an expert in this, but it is just really for you to have some just good knowledge and to be knowledgeable about your athletes in your sport and the prevalency of particular injuries that they might experience. It's important to recognize that every year high school athletes account for about 2 million injuries, about a half a million doctor visits, and about 30,000 hospitalizations. So, injuries are something that you will deal with. There's no doubt about it. Of course, all of you probably in your time as an athlete have had you've managed through some kind of injury yourself. So this is not something that is, this is not something that will be novel. You certainly will probably have had your own history to kind of refer to. But I want you to realize that if you're going to be working with like the high school age, like age 15 to 17, those are the athletes that have the highest number of emergency room visits related to sport injury. Um, and high school athletes have about the same rate of injury as professional athletes, but because teenage athletes aren't quite as developed, they are more susceptible to muscle, tendon, and growth plate injuries because their bodies are still growing and developing. And so, in general, you should all be aware if you're working with athletes anywhere from, sort of 12, 13 on through up to when they would go to college and be an athlete, And even for some of those that are in college, because their maturation time is still yet to come, especially for males, you're going to be dealing with, in general, those muscle strains, tendon issues, growth plate injuries, more so than people who would be working with higher level or elite level athletes. Um, Football obviously is a sport that has a high rate of concussion, um, and um, um, we have to be aware of that. But any sport with contact, soccer, hockey, lacrosse, basketball, even have are we are increasingly aware of the potential for head injury, and obviously the younger that athletes or people experience head injury, the higher potential for future head injuries and long-term trauma, brain trauma. Athletes can still suffer concussions even if they're wearing a helmet. So again, ice hockey, football, men's boys and men's lacrosse, even though you're wearing protective headgear, there's still the ability to suffer concussions. So I know you're all smart enough to know that you're not immune from concussion potential if you're wearing a helmet, but it is obviously important for you to really recognize that. Um, um, so more than, but I also want you to realize too that more than half of all sport injuries occur to like the lower extremities, most often the knee. You all should really think about being a knowledgeable or gaining some knowledge about the knee and ankles, because those are very common injuries that you manage as as an as a coach. So it is really important for you, I think, in any sport, to be thinking about how do you manage knee injuries, how do you help create stronger knee joints, lower body extremities, core strength, because everything comes from the core, right? And that the ankles too. So thinking about balance, proprioception, how do you focus on those types of exercises that can help lead to lesser incident rate of injuries in those lower extremities. Over 60% of injuries of organized sports occur during practice. So again, this is why it is really important for you to know what are best practices when it comes to hopefully, um, excuse me, avoiding the injury plague or the injury bug on your team. Um, so I do want to just end with this sort of statistic of an estimated 12 million individuals between the ages of 5 and 22 suffer from sport injury related injuries annually. So um, um, while we know that every year about 2 million injuries are related to high school athletes, and a half a million doctor visits, we know that 12 million individuals between 5 and 22 suffer sport-related injuries, and it leads to that what happens with injuries is that obviously we're talking about lost time, because during your recuperation phase you obviously are missing out on things. So from those 12 million injuries, it has led to about 20 million lost days of school, and approximately $33 billion in healthcare costs. So sport-related injuries there's a price to pay for those. So we want to do our part to try to um, really figure out how to avoid, again, high incident rates. If we can do some preventative measures to decrease the opportunity of injuries happening, that would be fantastic. We want to think about not avoiding overuse injuries, because they make up about half of adolescent sport injuries, and even about a third of college injuries. So we really want to be thinking about how do we train well, train hard, but don't overtrain, help our athletes get proper rest and nutrition. And again, this is why this is all linked to some of the things and the topics that Dr. T covered with you in class the week before spring break. So your assignment for this week is is to do a sport-specific injury research assignment. The assignment's posted on Moodle. You're going to find, first of all, you need to do a little bit of research and find out what is the most prevalent injury in your sport. When you look at your sport, um, what and the gender that you're going to be coaching is important. The age range that you're going to be coaching is important to find out what is the most frequently occurring injury. If there's a couple, like if there's a couple that are, 40% of the time or 30% of the time, these are the most common injuries, then pick one of the two. Or if you really want to talk about both, that's great too. You can do that. I mean, if you feel like, I feel like it's really important that I really understand about both these injuries, then do both. That's great. But what you're going to do is find 5 articles that discuss that injury. Um, and you're going to create the list of those 5 resources. You need to be thinking about credible resources, so like medical journals, exercise science or sport medicine, or sports science based articles, or resources on websites that are credible websites. Um, Top tier news outlets, so like a Sports Illustrated or like a Washington Post, New York Times, USA Today, those would be more reputable resources, so you can use those. So you're going to create a list of the articles that you select, 5 articles that you have to find based on the most prevalent injury in your sport. And then you're essentially going to create sort of this. You're going to provide a basic definition of that injury. What are the common occurrences of that injury, like how and when they happen, what you will typically see in an athlete that has that type of injury. And then you're going to list some preventative steps that you might take to help avoid a high occurrence rate of that injury in your athletes that you work with. So you'll put together, like some core exercises, like a set of core exercises, and maybe some balance exercises, proprioception exercises, whatever. So I provide an example for you on the assignment sheet, and I used ACL because of basketball. Female basketball players specifically, this is a very high injury rate of occurrence in girls and women that play basketball. So I sort of put together little sets of exercises. I wasn't like highly specific, but you get an idea of the example of what I want you to put together for the preventative measures you'll take in your training system, to help decrease the likelihood of those injuries happening at a high rate with your athletes. And then basically an outline. The last thing you're going to provide is an outline and a time frame that's typical coming back from that injury. So through your readings in your articles, you should most likely come across what's a typical post-injury timeline for return to play. And so you're going to provide that, and the support that you will provide, and some of the build up and lead up of exercises and sport specific training you will do to when they get to full recovery and are back fully to play. So that's the assignment that you're going to do. This will be very informative for you. You may think you already know about injuries. Maybe you've had the common injury in your sport, but learning about it from a coaching perspective is important. And again, can help inform you in terms of how you plan your training protocol for your athletes. So that is the assignment for this week. I have it due by next Tuesday, so hopefully you've seen this earlier than later in the week. At any time, speaking of this sort of like timing, but at any time, if you need more time to finish something, please just communicate with me. If you happen to get to this late and you're like, wow, I need a few more days for this, then just let me know. We can work through that. We're looking to be flexible here with trying to get everything accomplished that we want to get accomplished in this semester. So this will be due next week. You also have due this week your second draft of your coaching philosophy. I did post a little just sort of guideline for you as a reminder of what that philosophy should be about on Moodle as well. So and then the link for you to submit it. I know some of you are still struggling with how that philosophy should look, but this time when you submit it, I will be reviewing it, and hopefully we'll be able to provide some good feedback to you if you're really still struggling with how that philosophy should be put together. Hopefully this I'll be able to help you with that, with some feedback. So that's due. I originally have it due for Tuesday night, the 24th, but I'll give you a few extra days, so in case again you're getting to this video a little late, later in the week, you have some time for that. And again, even if you submit it after Thursday night, fine, just get it into me so that we can review it and get a good look at it in your second draft form. Okay, so article research on the injury, that assignment due next Tuesday, the 31st. Your second draft of your coaching philosophy, Thursday by midnight, or within the next couple of days of that. Um, and then for next week, you're going to want to be reading the last section of the book. So, section 5 or part 5, it's chapters 18, 19, and 20. You're going to have the reflection questions due for that, like you have all semester long for each of the sections of the book. But also, there's going to be an additional management worksheet, or like not worksheet, but assignment, that I'm going to have you do as well. And so that will be posted. That's separate from the questions for reflection. So that will be part of your work next week too in that section. Um, and then lastly, you are going to do kind of your first run at practice run at doing a coaching video, and you're going to do your kind of last little mini demo, which will be a conditioning drill that you will show. So that will be posted as well. And so it'll be kind of a little tester for you to do a coaching video that'll be shorter, and that we will post and make available for your classmates to see. And so this will also help get out some of the kinks and help you get ready for your longer video that you will provide as your live coaching demo at the end of the semester. So you look for that too. You're basically going to be doing um, a video on a conditioning drill that would be specific to your sport training, that you would use for your sport training needs. And so you will provide the instruction and the demo of the drill, and any kind of follow up as to why that conditioning drill is critical as part of your training in your sport. So that is the live coaching demo that we will have. Um, that will be part of next week's work. So it's not due next week, but it's part of next week's work that we're going to be doing. It's actually going to be due April 7th, so it's due a couple weeks from now. But it's for you so you can look ahead and you can start kind of thinking about how you're going to put this video together. Those of you that aren't as tech savvy, you might want to, take some time to get that ready so that you can do that mini coaching demo video first. And again, this will prep you for your longer coaching demo video that you'll be doing for the end of the semester. So, if you have any questions, shoot me a message. You can text me, group me. Some of you have grouped me individually, which is just fine. Text me, or email me. Just reach out, whatever. I'm here to help you however I can. So enjoy the research of the injury. Learn a lot from it. And let me know if you need anything. But otherwise, I'll see you next week. Have a great week. I hope your first week of online classes are going pretty smoothly, and you're enjoying sort of this new adventure, new format of online instruction. So take care, everyone. See you next week.